Welcome everyone to the HR Green Room, the place where people, culture and a couple of splashes of lime green come together. We're your hosts. I'm Louise Johnston, Head of Customer Success at Phase 3.
I'm James Proctor, Chief Operating Officer at Phase 3.
And together we lift the curtain on the world of HR with ideas, honest conversations and a few surprises along the way. Each episode, we'll ask what made us green with envy, what deserves the green light, and what's going on in the world of HR. And of course, we'll be joined by some brilliant guests who bring their own colour to the conversation. So grab a seat, the show's about to start, and this is the HR Green Room.
Just us today, Louise.
It is! Where's the guests gone? We scared them all off.
Yeah, we've had quite a few on lately, haven't we? So thought it was about time we did one just us again, talking about all things culture.
People first culture. This is a big one for me because I feel, even after 10 years of being with Phase 3, very, very lucky to work for an organisation with such a people first culture. So I think that it's become more prevalent since COVID actually, since people have been hybrid working from home. It's actually brought that people first culture to the top of the agenda, and it's something that wasn't there so much, I think, pre-COVID. And for me, it has to come from leadership. We've spoken about policies, procedures in past episodes of the HR Green Room. But I think when it comes to a people first culture, the clue's in the name. You can write as many policies as you want that says, we're a family friendly employer. We're a confident employer in this section. But actually, when it comes to people first, it's got to come from leadership.
And I think from every leader in the business, not just the leaders at the very top. I think that's
right.
Critical as well, isn't it? You've got to have that embedded. It's obviously, we're approaching that there from a small business perspective, and we work with some small businesses like ourselves and some huge multinational corporates, but from a larger business perspective, there are different challenges there, aren't there, in terms of culture, and they have to be more systemic and they have to be more organised and thought out, whereas in smaller businesses often it is the founder's behaviour and the people in the tight circle around the founder that gets really scrutinised and heavily discussed, and they have to be really careful in terms of how they model behaviour in those smaller businesses. But some of the key features, I think, in a people first culture, and we can discuss these one by one, and I'm sure you've got some ideas as well, but the first thing is about leadership, and it's leading with trust, and that is something that is really difficult to achieve, isn't it? And we've been a micro business who's grown quite significantly, and that I think it's been talked about in a previous episode, that small company super glue that Kate talked about all those years ago, in terms of when you're 10, 12 people and you all know what's going on in the business, as you start to grow and you go above 50 and you need your first HR system, and you go above 75 and you need your policies and you need disciplinary procedures and things that have never really been needed before, you can start to lose the essence of what the organisation is, can't you, in that time? And it's how you keep that small company culture, that agility, that flexibility at scale. That's often the challenge that makes HR teams think, how can we introduce this flexibility at scale?
Yeah, and I guess there's still not going to be one size fits all. So you might have a flexible working policy or a flexible environment. And for certain people, that might work really, really well. For example, if you've got children. But then I think we actually had it before where somebody said, well, how does it work for me? Because I don't have children, but does that mean that I can still work flexibly? We find often at school pickup, 3 p.m. is a time when people are wanting to go and meet kids from school, etc. how do you sort of translate that? Because it's not one size fits all, but then you've got to ensure that you've got that trust with those people. So my answer in that scenario was, of course, the role is flexible. If there's something that you need to do in the day, it might be that you want to miss the queue in the post office. I trust you to go and do that. And then when you get back, obviously, work is done.
Yeah.
So it really does hinge on trust both ways, from employer to employee, and having that respect that it works both ways.
Autonomy is an important part of that, isn't it? Leading and giving people the autonomy to make the decisions. So we were talking this morning in a different meeting that we were having together, actually, around our priorities for the next calendar year.
Yeah.
And whilst we're talking about what our priorities are, we're not there dictating how it's done, by who and when. That is the priorities. We set them in the vision, and then we give people the autonomy to implement those tactics that they need to do to deliver against those measurables. And that's important, because deciding how I work, when I work, and what work I do is probably one of the most empowering things you can give to an employee, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's important. And that's not going to be the case in every industry and every sector. But I think it is giving autonomy wherever there can be autonomy is a really important factor in terms of that people first approach. And ultimately it helps people build that trust, because they know that I've got a busy afternoon, so tomorrow morning I might take it easier, for example. And that's what we expect, that give and take. And that's all well and good during the good times, but there often are more challenging times in businesses, aren't there? And there are also times where, get ready with your bleeper, people take the don't they? And that trust is broken, and it's very rarely trust broken from the organisation to the employee. It's quite often the other way around, isn't it, where somebody has actually cancelled a meeting to go and do the school run, for example, which we would say isn't acceptable. You should have known not to plan it at that time if you were going to go around. Things are avoidable, and that's obvious. But taking that little bit of autonomy and decision making and flexibility and then abusing it is something that has to be called out. And I suppose, how do you think that happens without damaging the culture of trying to monitor people?
It's very difficult. There's a bit of an analogy, and it's a relationship one, actually, where when the waters are smooth, that's when, the analogy, it's like a boat on the water. When it's smooth, that's time to fix the sails, check that everything's working as it should. Is the boat in good repair? So that when you hit the rough times, like in an organisation, everything is as it should be.
Weather the storm.
To weather that storm. And I think that's the same working with people. So when things are positive, it's about giving authentic recognition, allowing people that flexibility. Things are going really well, take some time back because last week, as you said, might have been a challenge, so that they've got that flexibility. And then when things get tough and there might be more of an expectation to work a bit harder or smarter, slightly longer hours.
Batten down the hatches,
exactly. But that then when it gets better again, it's that flexibility. It's both ways. It's that employment relationship.
Yeah.
That's key, I think, is having that two-way conversation that you both understand each other, and earning that trust, because that's it. It has to be earned, doesn't it?
And boundaries are important as well, aren't they? That's really important, because you have to, as you would with a child, when you're in that experimentation stage in terms of what is the thing that I can do, how far can I push this flexibility? We as an organisation have to set the boundaries in terms of what's acceptable and what's normal. But I also think the culture will kind of take care of itself a little bit there, because employees will start to call each other out if they sense that somebody's pushing the boundaries unfairly as well. And it's how, as managers, you can then cope with that and tolerate that, because there's also got to be that element of psychological safety in the business. And that in itself is a challenge in terms of the nature of the employment relationship is that one person generally has a little bit more control because they are paying you, they have the power there. But ultimately, you want that balance to be also having that psychological safety that you know that you're not going to be kind of abused at work in any way. And I don't mean abused in the harshest sense of the word, but that you feel in any way that you're not being treated
of or something.
exactly how you want to be.
I mean, after all, this is the HR green room.
Yep.
What does the H stand for?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Human.
Yeah.
And I think when you're talking about humans, employment, there's a classic phrase, it's very old, I think it was Richard Branson or something: look after your staff, then your staff will look after your business. And if that is filtered down through leadership, that your staff are prioritised, you've got that good culture, that you are a people first organisation, it will filter down. And then actually, I'll be honest, when I first started working for Phase 3 all of those years ago, I thought to myself, there is no way I'm going to mess this up. I'm not going to take advantage of this, because it's so refreshing to work somewhere and be valued as a person. I'm not going to do anything to mess that up. And that came from the top. That came from Asad and Kate.
But what happens when people don't feel valued in those kind of organisations? Do you think then there's a bit more of a polarising effect? Because if you are somebody who is being recognised regularly for doing so well, does that then make other people fall out of favour? And the thing that I kind of link back to this is Sports Day. You used to have a winner. Yeah. But now everybody wins the award, don't they? Because it's got to be.
Yes,
you know, do we actually risk at sometimes trying to be too sensitive to the culture in a people first organisation, because we are so obsessed with how our people think, feel, react to things, that one person could share a view and we suddenly think everybody in the business thinks that. Is that a danger?
I think it is, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And ultimately, there is a job to be done as well. We're not, well, I don't think anyone employs anyone just to have a good time. The good times are there, but ultimately there's a job to be done, and that's what you're there to do. So it's about making sure that that balance is right. People first, but getting things done, because then the more productive that you are and the better off that the business the better off that the business is, then you can give that back to employees as well.
And from a HR perspective, one of the things that we would recommend in that instance is surveying regularly, isn't it?
Yes.
In terms of actually understanding the sentiment of the organisation. And I think this is something that we've had challenges with over the years as well, in terms of getting people to regularly show up and respond to the surveys. Now, we use the same questions, and we have for a number of years. And the purpose behind that is to build up that view of, is one element of our culture suffering compared to others? So, for example, it's, I understand the direction of travel and how I fit into that direction. Yeah. So if we see that that's dropping, we know we need to spend more time focusing on sort of communications in terms of that vision, linking people's objectives. And we've been through a whole OKR strategy, and we have a 90-day plan that is really clear in terms of each area of the business and how they contribute to that plan. But still, people can say they feel that they don't understand their direction. So surveying regularly has given us that insight, and what we see is we have a town hall and that question jumps up.
That's right.
And then we do the new 90-day plan and it jumps up again, and then it kind of tails us off as people start to forget these things.
You can see the trends, but then what we've also found is that there's times when people don't necessarily complete the survey, and I have that in my role within customer success. Is it that no news is good news? Is that neutral? What does that actually mean? So I know we were speaking about, well, maybe we should change the questions, because are people bored of answering the same one every time? But of course, then you can't measure it over time, because the question's changed. Yeah.
And it's interesting because you might not want to reply to a survey because you don't want to give negative feedback, because you might be not wanting to have that difficult conversation, because some people will struggle to say, actually, I've found that really difficult working with you in that way, etc. What we really try and champion is we don't want you to give us a vanity metric. That's the worst thing, isn't it? To have a pulse survey that says everybody gives you 5 out of 5 for everything, but only half the business have filled it in, and the people that haven't filled it in have got genuine issues that they need to be resolved, but they're not sharing them.
That's right.
And so that comes again back to the culture in terms of, do you actually do anything with those survey results? And I think we, again, as something that HR people can learn from in terms of our approach, when people fill in our pulse survey, one of the questions is comments, isn't it? So what could phase 3 do to make work life better, essentially? And people will put things in there. We've had things in the past like, I'd like different benefits, or I'd like you to consider this, or salary reviews are more important than bonuses to me because I'm looking for a mortgage and I need the permanent income. So sometimes it's resulted in further surveying to ask more questions around that. But what we then do is those comments are taken out and reported to the management team and then to the senior leadership team, and we identify trends through the year. We identify if there's positive constant messages, negative constant messages on any particular topic. And we found, for example, holiday cover was something that a lot of people were discussing because we have unlimited holidays, and ultimately that means a lot of people want time off all the time. And so being able to track in terms of, is that noise becoming less actually? So it's not that people are saying, a bit like in payroll, nobody thanks you for paying them, right? But it's not like people are saying, it's really easy for me to get cover now, thank you. But the fact that people have stopped saying that it's not a problem anymore tells us that it's not a problem. So by tracking it, it gives us that greater visibility. And it helps us to be able to demonstrate back to employees that these are the things you told us, and this is what we've done about them. And they go in the weekly update each week, don't they? In terms of people make comments, then they're responded to in the weekly update. So, there's a number of different communication methods that help instill that culture. And one thing I always try and promote, and I wouldn't say promote arguing, but disagreement should be encouraged, shouldn't it? As part of a management meeting or any kind of discussion around ideas, we don't want everyone to just agree.
Well, that's it. Otherwise, where's the growth going to come from? If you're not sharing ideas, things will just become stagnant, won't they? What about people that just want to get on with it, in terms of they might not be interested so much in career development? They might be very, very good at their job, happy enough, but they don't want to engage in a survey. They don't want to attend, weekly Teams calls. They're quite happy, things are okay, but they don't necessarily want to engage or develop. How do you think that works in People First? Leave them alone, or do you think that's a different strategy again?
Might have a different view to others on this, to be fair.
I know quite a lot of people out there do feel like that. It's just my job. I'll do my hours, do my work, and then bye.
Yes,
I'm
exactly. Off. Especially in a remote business.
Yes.
Because that adds another nuance to that as well, doesn't it? So I think we've done things like mandatory events in the past where we've asked everybody to come, and the feedback's always been, I don't want to go. I don't want to be away from my family for overnight when I've got to travel 4 hours to be in Manchester, have a corporate event, travel the next day back. I've lost 3 days with my family. I personally think we should do everything we can as the organisation to make those events as inclusive as possible. That if you can't attend for personal reasons or for childcare reasons, etc., that we should make the content available to people that weren't there so they can still consume the content. And that we do things over a period of time where sometimes it will be remote and everybody's remote, so that everybody feels the same. And the people that do want that social interaction and want to go into the office can do that. So they get the choice. Whereas in the past, I think we've been too polarised and we've done everybody must do one or everybody must do the other. And
I think as long as that person's still getting regular contact,
and support,
they're still getting their support one-to-ones, where you can actually say, as long as you're happy, so are we, but the door is open if anything changes, so that they know that those opportunities are there, and that they're available, even if that individual doesn't necessarily want to take them. And then you're still being people first, but in a way that suits different requirements, different styles, because like we said, humans, we're all very different.
I mean, we've got people that live 15 minutes away from the office that never come to the office, and because they don't want to. And we can try as much as we want to force people, but what's the point? Actually, if they're happy, we're happy with what they're doing, then why does it actually matter?
Well, or there's the opposite. I'm 4 hours away.
And you come up once a month.
One of our colleagues said to me this morning, "Why are you here?" Oh, yeah, that was a nice welcome.
Yeah.
But it was a surprise, obviously, to see me up here again.
Yeah.
But I find for me personally, it's about understanding people as individuals, tailoring things to their needs as much as you can, but not in a way that you end up giving so much to everybody on an individual basis that then you can't get on with things. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
It's not one size fits all, but enough so that people are happy, engaged, looked after.
It's that trust thing
it's
again.
Authentic,
You're trusting them that you don't need to see them regularly to know that they're still doing a good job. And the nature of the work we do, some of these people might spend more time with their customer than they do with us as the company and colleagues. So trying to keep that engagement is important, but we also have to accept that we can only take a certain amount of the responsibility for communication and engagement. We can invite people to everything, but if you actually just don't want to attend, that is your choice. And we can be annoyed about that, or we can take it for what it is, and actually they're just not interested. And that's the place in their life where they're at right now, and that's fine. And in future they might welcome more social interaction, or they might want less of it in future. But I think it does come back to the trust element of, as long as that's not a problem. And obviously we're talking about a business that's all remote. My wife works in a hospice, and they have different functions there. So they have they're called the caring kitchen. They do catering for outside events. So they've got quite a big catering team. She's obviously a nurse, and so she goes into work every single day that she works. And when she leaves the building, there is no contact with work, because her work is left there in the building. So it's a very different concept for her to consider how she might not go to a Christmas party or an event, because she's going into the office every day anyway. And they have a real challenge, I would say, in terms of office staff who do work remotely versus the care staff who are in the building every day, and the catering staff, in terms of how they handle that mix.
Of course.
Because it's, you would always expect that somebody that's always in the actual building can come to these meetings and things, but actually they're probably busier and harder to pin down than the people who are at home. So that brings itself a whole new level of nuance and challenge. And what I think they've done really well there is they have a hybrid working policy that sets out expectations that, for example, if you're in the building, you should make a concerted effort to be on time to a meeting. Because when you're all in the building, it doesn't matter as much, because you go into a meeting room, you might be getting a drink, having a coffee, you all sit down, the meeting starts. If you've got somebody remote, they might have been sat there for 7 minutes waiting for you all to do that. So they have a policy in terms of making sure that people are respecting each other's time and respectful of the fact that whilst you might be at home, I'm in the office and I might have a challenge there. And people have these digital, what's the word? When you start with an organisation, code of conduct. Digital code of conduct that says how we'll work in a digital space.
And on the note, I suppose, of digital conduct, I'm going to say it, AI and HR. You knew this was coming because we've been talking about it all morning. How do you think that is going to affect things from a people first point of view? I'll give you a scenario. I heard quite recently, it was somebody I knew that their son was going through a university application, and there was no human to interview them. The question came up on the screen, they had to answer it, and then presumably some sort of bot or AI or whatever would be scanning through what had been said and then assessing that individual whether or not they would get the placement. How do you think that's going to work? Because we've seen that the more you talk about AI, the more you talk about being a human. But a people first culture, and with HR tech and all the AI advancements coming through there, that's going to be quite interesting to see.
I think I made this point about 18 months ago when we were at the CIPD show and we were talking about this on stage. if a AI tool is helping a candidate write a CV and an AI tool is passing that CV and assessing it, where is the human interaction there?
Yeah.
I think it extends beyond just that example, though. So I do think it is a challenge. And I think ultimately it depends on what the other stages of that recruitment process are for the candidate as well. If they are then being screened and met in person because they felt there was a good enough match. But ultimately, I also think that it creates more of a level playing field for individuals. And by that, I mean it's more difficult to assess whether somebody actually has capability or whether they have cheated, essentially, and asked AI to help them. Now, I've seen this more recently. We had a payroll customer of ours who had a grievance from an employee, and they asked us to support them with responding to the grievance because it was partially about pay. And what they'd done was they'd raised this grievance. They'd written it, obviously, in some AI tool, Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, something. And they'd left the prompt in the grievance that they'd sent. Now, obviously, the business still has to respond to this grievance. But what they'd asked, the question was all around, why am I paying tax?
Okay.
This employee raised a grievance because they felt they shouldn't be paying tax.
Well, we all feel a bit like that.
Exactly.
Anyway.
We all, nobody wants to pay tax. But what they'd done was they'd obviously asked AI and they'd left the prompt in, like I say, I don't believe I should be paying tax. Please tell me all the reasons why I'm right so I can raise this in a grievance.
Okay.
So obviously the AI told them all the reasons why they could be right. None of them were relevant in this situation. Like, you've not worked you've not worked for the full tax year and now starting 10 months into the tax year having had no earnings. So it was a complete waste of time for the HR person and the payroll person to respond to.
Yeah.
They'd left the prompt in so it was obvious. I mean, it shows a behavioural issue, to be fair. But what it also makes me think on, and I shared this in terms of the 2026 trends on the challenges for HR.
Yeah.
If you did have a genuine human issue that you needed to address as part of a grievance process, using an AI tool to help you write that takes all the human element out of it.
Right.
And you're almost dealing with an adversarial being because you've told it to be adversarial. And when you're in HR trying to resolve that, appeals are probably going to be more difficult to manage because AI tools will be used to record the meetings. Everything will be transcribed. If there is a misspeak, for example, and somebody says something that they don't quite mean or it's taken in a different way out of context, I think it is going to present a lot more challenges to be so recorded. And that leveling up of having the ability to know every piece of employment legislation at the touch of a button, where you're a HR person supporting a manager during this process and thinking about their responses, it is going to be really challenging. So AI will challenge people first cultures, but I think obviously what we're focused on, and we've talked about this in our team meeting this morning, is human in the loop is a concept that we've talked about for the last 2 years, to be fair. And it is very much the trend at the moment that because there's this lack of trust in AI, human in the loop is an important part of that. What we want to focus on is enabling humans to use AI for advantage and not for disadvantage.
Yeah.
And that's going to be our focus probably for the next kind of 2 or 3 years whilst this AI wave is there to be ridden, in terms of helping people to understand how to use AI effectively and not to damage culture, because that person might not actually be that aggravated about this issue, but Claude has made them very aggravated sounding. And so, you're dealing with something at a different level than you expect. And it's why I think in informal grievance processes, for example, what we should be doing in HR is saying to the person that's raised a grievance, first of all, and I think I've said this in a previous episode as well, is this your own words? Is this how you actually feel?
Yeah.
Because we don't want to go through a process and you not feel that you've had the outcome you wanted because we're giving the outcome that the AI bot wanted that's helped you write that.
Yeah.
Now, if it's that you've written it and you've asked it to help you with the grammar and language, etc., that's different. But I think it almost should be the standard playbook now for the HR teams to say, on a human-to-human level, can we check and just understand, is this everything you wanted to say? is it your own words, and does it represent your actual issue?
Yeah. And I think there's also the other side of that where I was looking at some AI functionality in an HR system. And the example that we put in was as an employee, we typed in, I think I might be pregnant. And I thought that was actually quite a good example where the individual might be more confident speaking to
confident.
AI. Yeah, because, they might not want people to know. Although, of course, it would be a strictly confidential topic. You just don't know what goes on. The HR assistant, I'm sure they wouldn't, but would say, oh, guess who came in? You just don't know, do you? So on that level, the human in that example might be more confident speaking to AI. So I think it's going to be really interesting when we talk about a people first culture, how AI is going to affect that, enhance it, and maybe how AI thinks that we should implement people first culture.
I mean, we're probably being the pessimists in terms of talking about disciplinary grievances at that stage. But, there is also the big argument that get rid of the transactional noise from HR, and HR can be more focused on people and conversation and face-to-face time with individuals. So there is also a flip side to that as well.
Interesting times, right?
I think the other thing that we should talk about is how we invest in people as well. I don't mean we as Phase 3, I mean we as HR professionals and leaders in organisations that should encourage that professional development in individuals. And we've certainly seen lots recently of challenge around learning and development in organisations. And in particular, AI is shifting the landscape there as well, because you don't necessarily need to learn something to appear competent in it anymore, do you? And that is a challenge in itself, isn't it? Because if you can demonstrate something in a practical test, for example, that you supported with AI, and there's a bigger conceptual question around, well, does it actually matter now?
Yeah.
If you get the same outcome, does it matter you didn't know the theory behind it and the application? But there's lots of things around sensitivity there. But in particular, from a learning perspective, we have less patience and less time these days, don't we?
Absolutely.
And I think, if I ask you, if you needed to learn to do something, say in Excel, don't say ask James.
Yeah, here we go.
Where would you go?
Well, I would have asked you. Then, we would have Googled it, YouTube videos, had a play around, see if I could fix it. But then now, ChatGPT.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, then that probably is the answer. But even that, maybe 5-10 years ago, you might have gone to your e-learning system and done a course on Excel for beginners or intermediate Excel.
You'll never guess what I found the other day. So completely off topic. I found from when I was 20 years old, just before I got into HR, well, my mum found it. She found the invoice for my secretarial training. Excel expert was on there. I was going to send you a picture because it's so laughable. Once upon a time,
I've seen your Excel sheets and they are not experts.
I'm going to send you a picture of it, completely off topic, but you just reminded me. But it has changed.
And that was classroom training back then.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, we laugh, but it's because then I lost all of those skills because I never used them.
Yeah.
But the argument now, like I say, do I need to?
Yeah. So I would say probably about 18 months ago, if I needed to learn how to do something different on Excel, I probably would have gone to YouTube or TikTok and watched a short video from somebody who I might follow and know to be good at that. There is a particular lady on TikTok who does some incredible stuff with Excel. I don't know how I ended up on Excel Talk, but I obviously spend a lot of time on Excel. And I know that she's a kind of a trusted source that I know, but it also challenges the organisation then in terms of she might not be a trusted source. So she might be teaching people things wrong. So from a learning development perspective, we want to enable people, we want to develop people.
Absolutely.
But right now, I think if you went out and asked people, how do you want to learn? There'd be such mixed messages in terms of, I prefer e-learning, I prefer classroom style, face-to-face.
Yeah.
I prefer to go out and do my own research. I prefer to ask a an AI tool.
Yeah.
It is going to be a really difficult landscape. And what I'm really looking forward to this year is seeing the HR and Learning Technologies event, because we're going to see then what probably 150, 200 vendors in the room, because it's huge, the HR Technologies one, isn't it? What they're doing with learning and development in particular with AI and how it's supporting it. There'll be some elements where, a little bit like when you go on Netflix, it gets to know your algorithm and it knows what you're interested in, so it starts to present things. That to me now is like the basic level of AI in an L&D platform.
Yeah.
So what are we going to be able to do? What difference is it going to make, and how will learning styles change on the back of that? If you think, I know we've talked about this before on the podcast, but our cyber security training, I would say, is probably the highest level of engagement of any training that we've ever done. And when you think about it, it's quite silly really, isn't it? But it's like 8-minute videos. There's a really dodgy acting in it.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Luthor style character who's now turned good. I don't know if he's now like he's doing yoga and
the inside man.
Yeah, he's the inside man. Yeah, he's turned around. There's a love story in there, but the messages that it sends are really good, and I think it's really clever that we've all learned so much from it. But the way that it's engaged the people in the business has been completely different to anything else. If you'd have done that on Illumi 18 months ago, I mean, we struggled to get people to complete it. People are now on Viva Engage saying, has anybody seen the next episode yet?
And it's worked really well, because it's almost like the joke is in it that it's so cheesy.
Yeah. But the message
people
comes
can't
across.
wait for it. Yeah, the message is in there. So really interesting.
Yeah, I think the last thing we were going to talk about was listening in a business, and that is one of the primary strengths in a people first organization, isn't it, in terms of actually listening to people and understanding that. So what do you think HR teams should focus on in terms of listening to people in a business and how they would do it? We talked about surveys, that's one way, but any other things that the people should focus on?
That's quite a difficult question, actually. I think listening, and then certainly acting.
Closing the loop.
Closing the loop. It is great to have policy and procedure, but when you talk about listening, it's stripping all of that back to being human. So especially in HR, I think it's identifying how people work best, what individuals want, how you can tailor that, how to get the best from them. So active listening and actually responding in the right way.
And having availability to speak to people.
Absolutely.
There is a perception that leaders are always busy, but I would say if there's ever anything wrong, I would hope that people would know that forecasting meeting that's in a diary, for example, can be moved if it was somebody having a crisis at work that they needed support with. It's interesting, we've spoken to and met a lady called Caroline Birdsell, who's the head gardener.
Yes.
And she's probably going to be coming on a future episode we're still trying to arrange the dates, aren't we? And she talks about the principle of the business being organic, like a garden. And the language that she uses in terms of describing a positive culture and how some people need moving out into the light so that they get the sun. And you know, sometimes you might need to do a bit of weeding in an organisation. It's a really interesting concept, and I'd highly recommend reading her book that she's written, because it helps to bring this to life in terms of what we're talking about now, in terms of people first organisations and actually recognising what you need to do in an organisation. And the final thing before we start talking about our green with envy ideas is small business versus large business. We talked about this first. In a small business, it is likely that behaviour will spread more quickly. Now, that can be a positive thing and a negative thing, can't it? Because bad behaviour, if not challenged and resolved, can also spread quickly. But good behaviour spreading quickly obviously is a positive, and the values being shown in every single day-to-day interaction is much more common. Where it's much more challenging is in a larger business. So has there been any customers of ours that you've worked with at a large business where you've kind of felt, you don't need to name names obviously, that the culture might not be as positive or is a little bit different? And what were the signs and red flags that you saw there? I've got a couple of examples that I can think of. And
it's, I mean, do you know, the signs are actually quite the ones I've seen have been probably blindingly obvious.
Yeah.
When on Teams, you can still get a sense of people undermining each other, talking over each other. And these are, teams.
Yeah.
So they're arguing, disagreeing in front of a third party, which obviously would be us. We've even had ones where people have walked out the room on Teams meetings before in customers.
Remember that?
Yes, yeah. So I think telltale signs are sometimes there in terms of style and approach of leaders. I have seen somewhere I've thought, I'm not sure what that organisation would be like, where I've seen a leader be quite rude to her colleagues, challenging them on the spot in public in front of a third party.
In a derogatory way, not challenging as a support and challenge. But
no, quite derogatory. And I think, you can see it, and then I wonder what the culture must be like at that organisation if they're so blatantly acting like that in a public setting.
Yeah, and I think, again, get the bleeper ready, but covering for me is something that, it's quite a blunt term, but you see that and you can tell the kind of organisation, people trying to defend situations before they've arisen, fearing repercussions from people more senior in those organisations. I think that's quite a sad thing. I think we're very open in terms of not blaming people and learning fast and moving on.
Absolutely. And something so simple, and it's my first job in HR. My manager at the time, I would have been maybe 21 years old. I can't remember what we picked up. It was a mistake. And my manager said, we made the mistake. It's always we, even though we knew exactly whose handwriting was, we made that mistake. And that is something as HR. And that's something I've always carried with me to this day. We made the mistake. That was us. And then if a conversation needs to happen separately with that person, that conversation will happen. But outwardly, publicly, we did it. And it's quite a small thing, but I think that's quite meaningful. And that sort of encourages that people first, where you're not going to be, embarrassed or, blamed for something. That's really important.
I went to a customer for a visit, to a prospect actually, and they had a rule that they didn't share job titles externally. So you didn't know who you were meeting. So it could have been the CEO.
That's interesting.
And it could have been anybody. And we had the meeting. We had a really good interaction. Obviously, I knew people worked in finance, some were HR, some were payroll. And they said to me afterwards, I was the only supplier that they met that didn't ask them the job titles. Now, that was their policy. So I would have been... So
you told in advance?
No. So I never asked the question. I asked what function people were in to understand who's the payroll person I'm talking to, who's the HR person. But it's never usually in my kind of questioning when I meet new people to say, what's your title? And they said that we were the only people that didn't ask, and that they felt it was a more natural conversation because everybody else that they'd met with had asked who they were meeting and what the titles were. And they felt it started on a negative connotation because they were told, no, you won't know. But why does it matter? And so I thought that was a really interesting perspective. They'd taken that view that we won't share outwardly who you're speaking with, so that you treat us all as equals.
How interesting. Should we do that?
Yeah, I mean, they're all on the website, so LinkedIn doesn't help with that, does it?
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, I don't anyway.
Yeah.
And I would like to think internally it doesn't matter who I'm speaking to as to how I would speak to them. Maybe our team will tell us differently.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah, we'll see. So we're coming to the end of the episode. Yes. People first culture is something obviously that we're very passionate about. But is there anything anywhere else that you've seen that's made you green with envy in terms of a culture, a way of working, or even just something that an organisation has?
Do you know, it's a really difficult question. Nothing that makes me green with envy, because I think we're so fortunate to have a good people first culture. I think what I would say, it's maybe more of a green light,
Mm-hmm.
is for people to run with this. It doesn't, it is a big topic. We're talking culture, but little nuggets or little areas where even as line managers, you can be more people first, whether it's non-related work calls, little bits like they're using we rather than blaming others, things like that. It's those little pieces. So it's not so much agreeing with envy, because I think I'm very fortunate, but so I'm going to twist it, green light to people first culture, and a little goes a long way.
Yeah. I think my green with envy would be, I really love that we do lots of recognition publicly. Assad, our CEO, in his monthly update, always asks for us to nominate people. He nominates people himself who's he's interacted with that have gone over and above over the month. Customer feedback that we get shared publicly. What I'd like to see is some kind of reward mechanism that will become put in place that kind of points equals prizes or something. So
how would you do that? Because I'd just
this is the thing, because
vote for me.
The pessimist would say everybody will vote for their friend, or that if it was measured by something, every time a customer on an NPS survey called out somebody specifically, like we've had Lee Perks, let's mention him. Lee had some amazing feedback
famous
last week.
in our department now.
I know. He was in the office today. I actually said to him, congratulations on all of your amazing you are like the most preferred person from a client perspective ever at Phase 3. He works on Inventory Planner. He's been working fantastically with customers to implement the new product. And it would be really nice that, because he got so many, that there was something special that he got for doing that. Now, we have the P Awards with the most recognised employee, and they get a shield and a kind of a public appraisal. But that's the thing I'd like to think on, just something.
It's a good one.
And other organisations use things like Reach Desk, where you can order them something nice through there. So that would be my green with envy. I'd like to have.
Is that going on my task list? I feel, because we've just done all of our surveys,
all your MPS surveys. I'm thinking more internally, but I think just we should really focus on saying thank you to people where
absolutely, and
they
genuine.
have had that feedback. Yeah, because we do genuinely appreciate it. That's the thing.
Absolutely.
In the same way that we support the people who get the not so positive feedback sometimes as well. So that's my green with envy.
Good stuff.
So that's it for today.
Thank
you for joining us today in the HR Green Room. You can follow us on YouTube, give us comments, follow us on Spotify, and for now all that's left to say is keep giving the green light to the things that matter the most.